Hello, all, and welcome to the Movie Bears podcast. I'm Brad Harris, and along with my husky, hairy, huggable homos, and sometimes friends, we review movies either current or classic, all with a lovable gay bear twist, of course. And this week, we're coming at you with something very current. We're going to be discussing the newest entry in the Guardians of the Galaxy arm of Marvel movies. That's right, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Definitely stoked to talk about this movie. But before we do that, let me introduce you to those co hosts I aforementioned. Jim Pugliafico is with us in the virtual studio. Hey, sweetheart. How's it going?
It's going good. We're in the middle at the end of the Guardians of the Galaxy saga, maybe question mark. But yeah, I'm looking forward to talking about this movie. It's been a long time. I've been looking forward to it, and so we'll see how well it satisfied uh my need for Peter Quill and gang.
All right. Well, can't wait to hear your thoughts. Also, looking forward to hearing the thoughts of our other co host. William Lindis is also here. Hey, Will, how are you?
I am Groot.
All right. Well, glad to hear that. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead. And for those who are not, you know, understanding of Groot speak, tell us how you're doing.
Yeah, thanks. It's I've been doing the Rosetta Stone for Groot over the course of the last few weeks, and I've gotten most of the vocabulary down. My past participles are still a little off, but other than that, I'm doing great. It's always fun to be here at this cusp of summer time of movies, because we see a lot of films that are coming out that are like event films, and I would definitely say that Guardians of the Galaxy 3, the end of the Guardians of the Galaxy trilogy, as well as one of the kind of capstone films of this phase of the MCU's films. Is that they bookend each of the little sets of films as a phase, and this is the end of this phase. I don't know. I'm really excited to be here and to talk about this and to look forward to some of the things to come. So yeah, let's do this thing.
All right. Excellent. Well, glad you're here, Will. We have somebody in the live chat who has a comment already. It is Ben Woolley who says, "Hello, my sexy bears. Hey, Ben. Good to
Hey
see you.
Ben,
Welcome."
Rar.
I am Groot.
Suck your what? Oh, okay. Anyway, all right. So we got a lot to talk about. Big movie, big conversation. For anyone who is not familiar with the format of our show, though, we typically talk about films spoiler free for about 10 or 15 minutes. Then we rip off that band aid. We dive into spoilers, but we do give you plenty of warning before we do. We're not one of those podcasts that's just like, all right, well, let's go ahead and jump into spoilers. Here's this crazy thing that happens at the end, and you don't have time to hit pause or navigate away. We won't do that to you. We promise. We love and care about you. So hang tight with us, even if you haven't seen the movie yet. We'll give you our initial impressions on whether we think it's worth seeing or not. Chances are pretty good, though. You've already seen it if you're going to see it. But yeah, looking forward to jumping into this conversation. Jim, Will, are you ready to hop in our ship, blast off, and go save the galaxy through movie review conversation?
Always.
Yes.
All
Into the
right.
blue beyond, or whatever it is.
All right, sounds good. Well, then, with that said, here we go. Our discussion of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. All right, time has arrived to talk about this film that we saw over the weekend. I know we've all been really looking forward to this one. Will, as our resident comic book expert, it seems only fitting that you be the one to kick this conversation off. Tell us a little bit about what this movie is and what were your initial thoughts? Is it worth seeing in theaters, waiting for streaming on Disney Plus, skipping entirely? What do you think?
Absolutely. So, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, latest film in the MCU, third film in the Guardians of the Galaxy trilogy, and notably, the last film that writer-director James Gunn is going to do for the Marvel Cinematic Universe, since he's been tapped as the creative lead of DC's, Warner Brothers DC's film properties going forward. So this is sort of his farewell to the franchise. And because of all of those different things coming into this film, there was a lot of anticipation and wait, right? How are they going to close off this story? How are they going to close off James Gunn's story and his story as a filmmaker over here? They do so with a story that really centers around a bit of a fetch quest slash exploration of one of the characters' backstories. So in the last set of films, we've got Gamora. She in the Avengers movie, she's dead. She's back now, but it's an earlier version of her from the time stream. So she's essentially not the same person who ever traveled with the Guardians of the Galaxy. And this has really impacted the team, especially Peter Quill, who, along with his team, has built up a new base and community, an extended family of space outcasts on the floating head of nowhere. But something happens. One of their own is injured, and the rest have to race across the galaxy to find out more about how this injury works and how they can go about reversing it. Along the way, big things happen. I very much enjoyed this one. I'm I'm already, the audience for these films. I enjoy them. I think they're fun, they're exciting. They always do something that narratively compels me. I think this especially did that. I would say that this is definitely the strongest film of this phase of MCU films. Because it manages to do all of the things that the MCU does when it's doing what it does the best. The funny parts are remarkably funny. Like, this movie is pretty wild in spots. The tender moments are very tender. There are several grab a tissue, grab your, hope you didn't get too much butter on your napkin moments because you're going to smear it across your face. Every one of the characters, and because of that, the entire franchise, and because of that, James Gunn's story with the MCU, I feel like has an arc that continues not just from the previous films, but projects through this film, and all of them feel satisfying in where they land. And I think that's important. That there were a lot of big things this film needed to do to not necessarily to be successful, but to really live up to some of the expectations. And I think this one does it. Dare I say it? This is one of those rare movies where the third movie in the trilogy, and we've recently talked about a third movie in a starfaring trilogy that was good, but maybe not the strongest. I think there's a case to be said that this may be one of the strongest, if not the strongest, of this trilogy. And that's a pretty cool place to be. I absolutely enjoyed this one. I think you should go see it in theaters. I think you should go see it with friends and family and loved ones. I think you should come ready to pay attention to everything that's going on screen, and to take notes on all of the different amazing needle drops so that you've got something to listen to on the way home. This is high marks all around for me. We'll talk about some of the reasons why, some of the performances here in a moment, but just here we are at the outset, and it's a thumbs up for me.
All right. Big recommend from Will. Scott Stace is in the chat. Hey, Scott. Good to see you.
Hey, Scott.
Hey, Scott.
Yeah.
He says, hello, boys. Hey, Scott. Hope you and Tommy are doing well. Jim, how about you? How did this movie hit for you? Were you equally as enthralled as Will, or maybe not so much? Where'd you come down?
Yeah, well, I definitely am. I mean, I think I'm gonna just continue Will's love fest. I really was anticipating this film because I've said all along, ever since the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie came out, I don't know how many years ago now, and we were in some other phase of the MCU, and even though I was feeling fatigue already at that point for some of the Marvel properties, and I think we were deep into Avengers at that point, and not every superhero movie is my jam. For some reason, I really resonated with the storytelling within Guardians of the Galaxy, and Peter and James Gunn has carried that strongly throughout all three movies, and I think held up uh, the the quality of the films. I So when this movie came about, I'm like, I caught some things in the trailer that made me have even more hope for this story, and we'll get into that a little bit more in spoilers because they did focus on some things with the characters. What astounds me about these films, and I'm going to say it, is we've had a lot of Marvel MCU movies. We had the whole Avengers universe, like with all those superheroes. A lot of those superheroes had how many Avengers movies, as well as their own series of movies, right? We've had Thor, we've had, Iron Man. Some of those characters have been in, 6 or 7 movies or more to tell their story, and I don't really think there's any other characters in kind of the Avengers circle that really come close to the storytelling that James Gunn was able to tell in these three movies for these three characters. He really cares for his characters and focuses a lot on his character writing. So I love that about this film. Yeah, this film has a lot going for it. Of course, all the great actors and voice actors that are in here are back. Yeah, I love this movie. I'm looking forward to seeing it again, probably, which is high praise from me for any kind of comic book superhero movie. But I really think, I put this set of movies above the Avengers movies. I'm going to say it right now. For me, I just maybe it's something about it that just vibes best with me. But I think, between, like I said, between the character writing and the story that he tells, and this team of characters, how it focuses on, you know, not to be too cliche, but centers on the team. This feels more like a team or a family of characters than Guardians ever did. So, yep, I'm fully on board. I love this film. Um, and bravo! I think it should be seen. I think it should be seen in a theater if you can, and if you feel like it. I highly recommend it.
All right. Another big recommend. I guess it comes down to me to shit all over this movie. I will be the voice. No, I'm
Thanks,
totally
No,
just
you
Brad.
kidding.
won't.
I fucking loved this movie. Man, it was so good. And I'm so relieved that I loved it because after the second movie, I I don't know. I was a little worried where this arm of movies was going to go. I actually didn't enjoy the second one that much. Um, I just, I don't know. I had several issues with it. Wasn't a huge fan. First time I saw it, I was really sleepy. I thought maybe that colored my views, but then I went back and watched it again, and I felt the same way. So, coming into this third movie, I was just kind of like, it could be good, it could be not. I felt like I saw everything in the trailers. But this movie absolutely blew me away. So much so that I cried at 4 different times in a superhero movie, which I would not expect. And we can talk more about some of those moments in the spoiler section, of course. But uh, I was joking that this movie has more heart than a cardiology ward, and I stand behind. Will's making heart symbols. I stand behind that. And Jim, it's so interesting that you mentioned enjoying this band of characters more than the Avengers. I feel absolutely the same way. These characters are superheroes, I guess. I mean, some have powers, some have really cool weapons, but I don't know. Like it feels weird to say it's more grounded than the Avengers, but like I don't know. It feels like a group of more relatable people and less like stuffed shirt superheroes. I really appreciate the camaraderie that these folks have. You both mentioned they're kind of a family, and I totally feel that. I would even argue that they're a D&D party with everybody filling a different role, and it kind of feeling like just a really neat simpatico that develops between them and their conglomeration of skills, that they weave in and out of using and being dependent on for. I think that the performances in this film were fantastic. Bradley Cooper as Rocket, holy hell, probably my favorite like Marvel character in any of these movies now. I really liked Rocket in the first movie, but after the events of this film, like he's just, I don't know, he's catapulted to the top for me. And honestly, this movie's so refreshing after seeing Ant-Man and Wasp: Quantumania, which I didn't really like that much. Um, Black Panther: Wakanda Forever was pretty good, but like, just several other movies. I don't know if it's Marvel fatigue in general or super fatigue, superhero fatigue. But I don't know. I haven't been feeling these movies as much. So to go in and have such a great time with it and feel things so deeply, I think is a big feather in this film's cap. So I'm excited to see what James Gunn is going to do for DC now that he has officially departed and moved on over. He's got a Superman movie coming up, Superman Legacy, and before I saw this movie, I was just like, oh fuck, really? But now I'm here for it. I want to see James Gunn's Superman movie. So super stoked, super stoked. But yeah, this movie was fucking amazing. Don't sleep on it. Super good.
Yeah, I just find this Guardians of the Galaxy bubble to be like just something, I just want to treasure and keep aside from. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it could be totally separate from the Marvel universe, and it wouldn't be affected in any way at all. It feels separate, and I know there's been crossover, and I know these characters have appeared briefly in other Marvel films. But all of that aside, even if that all didn't exist, I just think these three films are about as perfect as a, action adventure comic book characters, trilogy as you can get. So, yeah, I'm definitely psyched, and like I said, I'm jazzed to see it again. There's just so much. There is a lot jammed into this movie too. There's a lot of action set pieces. There's a lot of character work going on. Especially we talked about Rocket. Rocket's been my favorite character since the first movie, and it's interesting. We'll talk about that a little bit. Haven't read any interviews or anything with James Gunn. It seems like he took some special care with that character. He takes care of all of his characters, as I mentioned before, but it seems like he gave Rocket a bit of a special treatment, almost like a favorite in a way. So I just wonder what is going on behind that. And I'm not complaining. I'm just curious to find out.
Well, I mean, a big part of that comes from, if we want to sort of get outside of the creative side of it and get to the marketing and financial side of it. Like, Rocket's a popular character, same with Groot, right? And those two characters, they have lots of spin-off like comic books. I mean, at one time there was a Rocket Raccoon, a Groot like solo series, and then a Rocket and Groot like team up series happening with like all the toys and the merchandise. So James Gunn being able to find a compelling story for that character, and that also aligning with like sort of the brand's like marketability needs, I think that's that's one of those he could have I bet you he could have walked in and said, I want to do X with Rocket Raccoon, and they would have been like, yeah, go for it, do it, James.
Yeah.
Especially because his this is a character who's, so a lot of that marketability has risen dramatically because of the care that that was given in the first film. And I think that's true of all of these characters, especially those kind of like that core five, right? you've seen, like, this franchise really helped catapult Dave Bautista, into someone who has the potential of being like the next version of Dwayne Johnson, but like, I dare say better, right? I think he's a stronger performer. Chris Pratt's the tough one, because there's a lot of stuff with him, a lot of weight with him, kind of like outside of the film franchise right now. And if someone, I know at least one person who's like, look, I struggled to watch these, and probably won't go see this one, just because I know about his beliefs and how those, and that's just something I can't cross, and I get that, right? But I will say that watching this, that goes out of the window pretty quickly for me when he starts playing the Star-Lord character, because like the things that he does that are maybe a little tedious for me actually kind of work and are endearing with this one specific character, if that makes sense.
Go ahead, Jim.
No, go ahead, Brad. I'll pile on with something after.
I was just going to say, Scott in the live chat is asking about Chris Pratt fatigue, even on top of the issues of some of Chris Pratt's like personal beliefs and stuff.
Yeah.
Are either of you feeling that?
And I know there's been some issues with things that have come across, things he has said outside of this, the movies, right? As a Chris Pratt as a actor and as a person. And I haven't dived too deeply into that. I just know that there's been some problematic stuff that I've seen come out of him. But I got to say, within this movie and within these movies, the first movie comes out, he's the first one we see on the screen in the first movie, right?
Right.
And you get the sense that this franchise is setting him up as the de facto like leader, right, of this group. And I suppose he is to some level, right? But I think in this third movie, it almost felt like to me, yeah, he's been the default leader of the group, and the other characters kind of look to him for leadership. But this movie feels more like almost like it dialed back on that a little bit, especially with Chris Pratt. There seemed to be less Chris Pratt-ism in the character of Peter Quill in this movie than there was like in the first movie and the second movie. At least I sensed that. I don't know if everybody else would sense that.
I think some of that comes from the fact that this movie is now balancing way more characters. By the time you're the third film in a franchise, you've picked up people along the way, right? That's just the way these things grow. Here you've got, not only do you have your kind of core five, but you've also got Mantis, who became a prominent character. You've still got Nebula, who's absolutely killing it, and it's just like one of my favorite characters in almost any scene. You got Kraglin and Cosmo stealing the scenes. You've got, and then and of course then your villains and your peripheral NPCs who are kind of running around doing stuff. But so because of all of that, you got to share the love a little bit more. And I'll be honest, like, Chris Pratt fatigue is very much a thing. Like, when he pops up in like the Jurassic World movies, I'm not excited. No. He was, while I maybe didn't have the same problems to the same degree as other people did, he was the weakest voice performance in the Mario movie. When he pops up in things, I'm not usually excited, but there's something about very specifically this role that he is very, very good at. He plays sort of like endearing man-child who kind of bumbles his way into your heart very, very well in this one specific instance, right? I feel like this movie is sort of like the counter to Chris Pratt fatigue. I don't think it'll make you like a fan of him on the other side of it, but I think you'll be able to put that aside for a minute.
Yeah. And what makes him endearing, I think, as a character is that, I mean, his character is not always right. He's not always got the answers, and even while he may think he does sometimes, he doesn't. And the movie is written that way, and I think that's great character writing.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely agree. Well, I think we're at the point where it's hard to keep talking about this without revealing, tidbits that happen in the film. We're trying to be creative, but let's unshackle ourselves, shall we, and move on to some
Mhm.
spoilers. So if you
Yeah.
haven't yet seen Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, this is your chance. If you care about spoilers, go ahead and step away while I awkwardly ramble. Come on back, finish listening to our review once you've seen the movie. If you don't care about spoilers or you've already seen the film, then by all means, continue to hang out with us. But spoilers for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 are officially fair game.
I think
Yeah,
now's
and
a good time to sort of like set up the rest of the plot just kind of briefly so that we
have a
know what we're talking
framework.
about here. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, this is a film that really delves into Rocket Raccoon's backstory, right? We've talked about
Mm.
how we get to see a lot more Rocket here. And the reason for that is in this movie, he is grievously injured, and you find out that he can't be healed with med packs the way normal other people can, because he's got some sort of proprietary like code, like
Kill
corporate
switch.
kill switch that's been attached to his heart. That happens whenever someone tries to heal it. And you find out that there's this villain named the High Evolutionary, who is a character who genetically modifies animals, trying to build like a perfect race. And in doing so, tortures, kills, commits genocides, and wants Rocket back desperately because he's the first of his creations that didn't just show something new, but also showed actual sparks of creativity. And so I think that's sort of the foundation that we're at. We've got this race against the clock to save Rocket through the first like 2/3 of this movie. But even though he's not a catalyst for the actual action that's happening on screen during those portions, there are these interstitial cuts, and I think that's where I'd be most interested in maybe talking a bit as about these backstory flashbacks with Rocket, where you
Mm.
find out about him and some of his fellow animals who were, I mean, let's face it, tortured and modified and just gruesome to the point where if someone said, "Hey, I don't know if I can watch this movie because of the animal cruelty," I would be okay with that because I understand that sentiment. But it was compelling, it was emotional, and it gave us this real 360 view of this character.
Yeah, well, you're right. I mean, look, all three of us are animal lovers. We, Will, that's part of that is your profession, right? So,
Yeah.
um, and so this film really leans on, the aspect that Rocket is kind of a product and a victim at the same time of horrific animal cruelty and experimentation. That was hinted on, by the way, I think in the very first movie, by the way. This is,
Oh yeah.
again,
Yeah.
this is what you call, I mean, this is great, like, well, what is it? Long-term storytelling, right? Where,
Mm-hmm.
he set seeds in the very first movie for what pays off in a little bit in the second movie, but mostly in the third movie with this Rocket character. Um, yeah, but you're right, Will. I mean, somebody might say, "Hey, I heard there's animal cruelty in here. I don't think I can see it." Yes, it is. Yes, it's tough to see on screen. I think it definitely though is handled in a way that builds your empathy, obviously, against any type of that behavior. Right. This movie is, I think, making some sort of statement against, um, you know, using lesser, quote unquote, lesser beings to better another set of beings or another race or another species or whatever it is. But I mean, and that was it's a very powerful premise to build the story on, and everything kind of goes out from around that center, that emotional center of the film, which is Rocket's story, Rocket's friends' story, and kind of what drives him. Also, that is also driving the villain in this movie. Counter to those characters. It's really well done, and really worked on me. Will, you mentioned butter on the napkins. I was a butterface by the end of the movie.
Oh, and Brad, you mentioned you cried 4 times.
I did, and the animal cruelty stuff is like a couple of those times. In fact, D Geek Will, hey other Will, he says it's CGI animals, but damn, it was rough to watch in parts. And other Will, I completely agree with you. That was hard for me. Like, I don't know, I have such a big soft spot for animals, and I mean, I don't even like hunt. I know that hunting is like necessary for overpopulation and whatnot, but like, I don't know. Like, I have a really hard time thinking about doing animals harm. So even if they were CGI, even though I know it's completely fake and they're made up characters, like, seeing that hand reach in to like pick up baby Rocket and like drag him out and experiment on him, and um, the other animal characters when they all found out that they were not going to the colony, that they were going to be wiped out and killed. And I don't know, I got really excited because I'm like, okay, I know Rocket makes it out, so like this scene where he is like unlocking the doors with the thing he made, he's going to get them all out, it's going to be great. Oh no, fuck no, we're not going to do that, they all die.
Really dark moment in the
Yeah.
Yeah,
film there. Yeah.
yeah,
Oh my
yeah.
God.
And does not pull any punches.
It does not. And
Which, go ahead, babe.
I lost it at that point.
Yeah,
Like, I'm
yeah.
hard sobbing in my seat. Like, that was so hard to watch. But I'll tell you what, like, my empathy of and my understanding for the Rocket Raccoon character just exploded at that point. Until then, he was just a funny raccoon, like mouthing off and shooting guns. But like, he really became a fully fleshed out, really deep character for me that I will forever fucking love at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fully agree. Yeah, I mean that whole scene with Lila and Teefs and Floor.
Mm-hmm.
You don't get a ton of time with them, but the time that you get with them is sort of through Rocket's point of view, and when he is young and inquisitive and doesn't quite realize fully kind of how shitty the situation that he's been born into is. And there is they become this little impromptu family for him, for all of them. And then then when they're taken away from us, and brutally and suddenly and without a lot of lead up, when it happens and it happens quick. um it kicks you in the gut the same way that it kicks Rocket in the gut. And you're right, Brad. Like, this is one of those perfect, like, little, like, all of the different, like, pieces of Rocket just start to click into place, and you understand why this character is the way he is. Yeah, and that's it's hard to watch, but it's also compelling and well written and very, 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 very good.
And it doubles down too. There's a scene where like Rocket flatlines on the table and he sees, Lila and Floor and Teefs again. And I'm getting emotional thinking about it.
Yeah.
But they're talking about like, seeing the sky and flying around together. And Rocket's like, can I go? And Lila's like, of course you can. And you think, oh, that's the end of Rocket. Okay. But then she's like, but you have work to do still. I don't know, that we've seen that a lot. Like, we see that in Harry Potter movies and Star Wars movies, and where you think the character's
Yeah.
dying, they're going to heaven, whatever, and then they come back. But something about what Rocket has gone through with these other characters elevates that scene in a way that I don't think I've felt in other movies that do something similar.
Well, because they've suffered a lot, and they're still suffering in a lot of ways, right?
Mhm.
Rocket, and he wants to leave that behind for something that's much better in his eyes, right? And so that's what we want for that character too. At that point, we want their suffering to stop, but But
like
we get
this.
it does double down. Can we talk about Will's comment? Because I want to I try to understand what he's saying here and talk about it.
Yeah.
Go ahead and read it if you don't mind, babe.
Okay, sure. D Geek Will, hi Will. He says, seeing that really makes what he experiences with Infinity War harder, since he and Nebula were the only survivors of that. So he had to go through that a second time. Can do you guys understand exactly what he's saying? I'm not sure I get it all.
Yeah, so in the Infinity War, the first of the kind of the back-to-back Infinity War in-game movies, at the end of Infinity War, when Thanos snaps and everyone gets dusted except on the Guardians of the Galaxy team, except for Rocket and Nebula. So think of it from Rocket's perspective, now knowing all of this, just like in a snap of a finger, Lila and Tooths and Floor are taken from him. With a snap of a finger, all of the original Guardians are taken from him too. So he has to go through that a whole second time. And what's amazing about him as a character is you then see during that 5 years later screen, when that pops up and we see what he's doing afterwards, he's still combing the galaxy, trying to find ways of fixing things. You know, he's part of that like holographic council of like kind of the survivors that are all kind of like meeting with Black Widow and Captain Marvel, and all of them trying to figure out what they're going to do next. So it tells me that this is a character who's gone through the unimaginable twice, and he's still been able to like pick himself up and kind of push forward and try to, you know, keep momentum and try to help. And that's, I don't know, it makes you realize that he's, you know, to Brad's point from earlier, he's not just like the funny cussing talking raccoon, but I mean, this is a franchise of superheroes, and Rocket Raccoon is a damn superhero.
Right. I guess my only issue, and yeah, I definitely see the point now. My only thing here gets back to one of my big issues with some of these superhero movies is that stakes don't always land, right? And I think in Infinity War they tried to make these are huge stakes. We're killing off half, more than half of the superheroes. But guess what? In the next movie, like almost all are back, right?
Yeah, but
and then you knew in this movie when Teefs and Floor and Lila were gone, they were gone. Like there didn't seem to be like a magic waiting around the bend to bring them back. At least I didn't feel that.
Well, I say that, I think that just because in a film that is specifically about time travel, because that's what those two movies, that was, they were about like magic stones that give you like the power to turn people to dust and stuff like that. The stakes aren't whether or not someone stays dead at the end. It's kind of what they've lost in the process. So like if the two of you, like in a moment, were turned to dust, and then 5 years later you came back, there are stakes there. That's a pretty shitty 5 years of my life, right? And so you know what I mean? So like, Rocket still had to go through all of that. And we as an audience, had to go through the fact that for them to come back, other characters in those films had to permanently die. Like they had to sacrifice themselves. Like, there were characters who, like, if this one person dies, half the universe will be resuscitated, and they made those. Anyway, so I know that's a bit of a side tangent, but I think that like the major point that I really want is just really focusing on just like how much Rocket has grown as a character too, because do you think that he would have been the guy that would later lead the Guardians of the Galaxy, or the guy that would team up to do all of that at the very beginning of the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie? I think he was still sort of in like survival mode there. And so he's grown into someone who values this family unit. And I think that's so cool. Every character gets that arc too. Nebula goes from the most standoffish character to the person whose sort of arc in this movie is recognizing that the value that Drax brings to the team isn't his muscles, but it's his like goofy, like dad joke energy. And
Mm-hmm.
that's something that, again, she would have never done in the first movie, but she does because of this weird little misjointed like family unit. Every one of these characters gets that, and that's really cool to me.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So at the end of this movie, everybody kind of goes their separate ways, right? The big bad is put down ostensibly. Who knows if he'll show up again? Um, but we end up with this situation where like Rocket is in charge of the team. It's obviously been some time because Adam Warlock doesn't sound like an idiot anymore. He's emotionally, intellectually grown up, and they're like, being Chicago hipsters about music. But it raises a question for me as to whether these movies are going to continue with this new team, or if this is just the cherry on top to show that the Guardians will go on just with a different roster, but we're not necessarily going to get movies with them. I don't know that anything has been like officially said that like this is the absolute end. And in fact, we got a screen at the end that said Star-Lord, will return. So what do you guys think they're going to do, or what would you prefer they do?
I can tell you right now, I prefer they not start a whole new. I mean, I don't know. I'm torn. I like to have my endings be endings. You know what I mean? Not like, oh, we're gonna resurrect this whole thing and make it again, but maybe not as good. That usually is the case. Um, so I just love the resonance of this movie, how it ended. At one point in the movie, somebody said to Rocket, it's been about you the whole time, meaning, like he was. I think what they're kind of saying is like he was kind of the heart and soul of the group, right? And what that led to his quote unquote promotion, if you will, to being the de facto leader of the group, which is fine. And but I say leave that as it is. Let me have my happiness knowing that some form of the Guardians goes on. I don't need to see another 2 or 3 movies about them. I'm good with what it is. So that's what I would prefer. I would prefer they leave it alone. Yes, Star-Lord's coming back. I figure he'll show up in other Marvel properties, movies, probably somewhere. And maybe some of these other characters, maybe even Rocket or, some of the other characters. But I don't necessarily need to see a whole nother dive into Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same. Like, I think where it left off was that was such a compelling end for very specifically all of the characters that were on the final roster in that little cutscene, as well as for Drax and Nebula. The two of them found like value in community building. The other group found, like their adventures are going to continue. If you do anything with any of the other characters, I think there is still some room for obviously, legendary Star-Lord will return. And I think there's probably room because of that and because of the Mantis' half-sister thing. And she's still kind of out there looking for stuff on her own, maybe doing some Mantis stuff, right? And so I think that's kind of, the characters that we're most likely to still see do stuff. With the caveat of, I was thinking of one exception that I would 100% be down for. And that's if they did another, like, Christmas special at some point, because I think those are fun and you can kind of like revisit those characters and find out, get a little bit more story out of them without it feeling like it's like taking away from the ending. It's just sort of like a little, like, you can do like a little check-in story with them again. So if they had a really I don't think they are. I think James Gunn was part of that and they're closing the door on that. And so we're not going to see any more of that. But if for some reason James Gunn did come back and say, yeah, I'm not really doing movies for y'all anymore, but I will do another holiday special, I'd be down for that.
I could go along for it because
Brad.
Well, couldn't finish your thought, Jim.
I could see an improvement over the first Christmas special.
I liked it. It was fun.
I didn't say I did. I hated it. I just, it was fine. It was fun. Kevin Bacon, man.
Kevin Bacon.
I think I agree that I like where these characters are now, I don't think I want to see like another trilogy of movies, kind of expanding things from here. A brief check-in, I think, would be great. Make sure everyone's doing good. I'd be all right with that, but I definitely don't want another like long drawn out series of films. I don't even want like a 8-episode TV show or something, like, a one-off.
Animated.
Okay, right. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I love the idea of Rocket being in charge of the team now, and um, I'm curious what Mantis is going to do on her own. Um, it's interesting that Star-Lord has gone back to visit his grandpa, and it was cool that we got a scene, at the end in the stinger. I don't know that I entirely understand what that stinger was all about. If there was some deeper meaning, like is the father-in-law or whatever the fuck he was, is he a Marvel character or something that they're alluding to? I don't know.
Yeah, it's complicated because in the comics, his father is this like crazy like space traveling being thing called Jason of Spartax, and so or Jason of Spartax or something like that. And that's the name, like Jason or whatever is the name of the grandfather. But that's not who that character is. His father in these movies is Ego the Living Planet. So
Right.
that's where the reference comes from. I would be interested in seeing if, because I was really thinking about this, like, what the fuck are they gonna do with Star-Lord? Like what's the next part of the story? And I do know that we've got coming up in like a month or so, we've got all of that Secret Invasion stuff with Samuel L. Jackson. Some characters are secretly Skrulls that are invading Earth and stuff like that. That's a compelling place to see, like, that character. So that's sort of my vote on where we see him next, because I can't think of another franchise that he has ties to. So I don't know.
Maybe we'll get like a scene where Star-Lord has got his hands outstretched towards some Skrulls, like keeping them at bay, like the Raptors. It'd be perfect.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you guys dig the needle drops in this movie? Because these movies are known for their soundtracks. So tell me what you guys thought.
I mean, there were several good needle drops in this. Like, every needle drop was good. Even the ones that, look, I just got pissed off at the Mario movie for for the use of some of the needle drops, including like the Beastie Boys, like No Sleep Till Brooklyn, which
This movie did the same.
And this one did the same thing. So Chris Pratt has had that needle drop twice this year, but it works here and it doesn't work there. And it just goes to show you that a needle drop is not a replacement for a good movie. A needle drop is used to augment a mood or augment a tone. But the absolute best needle drop in here for me, just because of its like emotional resonance, was when the Florence and the Machine Dog Days Are Over hit, and all of the characters are able to just sort of finally let all of that shit that's been weighing them down off. We get to see a bunch of doofy, like, there's something that happens in movies that I usually roll my eyes at when, like, at the end of like a comedy, like as the credits are playing, all the characters like dance together, and I'm just like, okay, that's kind of what we get here.
You know what that moment was? You know what that moment
was from the
was,
Christmas.
Will?
They did that in the Christmas special.
Yeah, that moment was the Ewok celebration from Return of the Jedi.
Yeah,
basically.
Yeah. And here it's catharsis, right? Like every character has gone through their own little crucible. They've come out the other side, changed, different, hopefully better, and all of that is projected through the lens of this one song. Like, and that, I get like goosebumps just thinking about it. Like, yeah, it's so good. And then the Redbone needle drop at the very, very, very end, the Come and Get Your Love, which is sort of like a bookend from the first movie. So it's so good. Well, I mean, what about y'all? I mean, so many good needle drops.
Yeah, I think this movie's on par with the first movie in terms of the quality of its needle drops. I think the second movie wasn't that super. It was fine, but it wasn't super great for me. There were some great ones here. Again, I'm going to see the movie again so that I can really enjoy those more.
Yeah.
But there were some songs that popped up like, oh, I love this song, and it's a great, and it fit really great in the action or to heighten the scene as well.
So, Jim, I know you mentioned being up for seeing it a second time. We're going to Palm Springs for an event this weekend. A bunch of friends are going to be there. And Andy and Brian want to go see it Thursday night at like 9 o'clock. And they've already started getting a group together. So we could add on to that if you want to see it again with friends.
We'll see.
Or, we could wait for streaming or something and watch it.
Or see it when we come back, whatever.
Or see it when we come back, whatever. But
it'll be around.
I agree. I think the needle drops were fantastic. I just find myself wishing that there was like an official, like the official score has been released, but I don't see like an official album of the songs like there has been for the last couple. I know Spotify has a playlist, and I know people on Apple Music have made playlists because the songs, are already out there. But I don't know. I own the first two as like a soundtrack album. I don't know what's going on with the third one. So,
do you have the first two on cassette? I feel like
it has to be a cassette.
I should get the first. I need all of these on cassette. I need my awesome mix volumes 1, 2, and 3. I think it's also worth noting that the action in this is super good. I especially want to call out basically a hallway fight scene where all the characters are going through. They have to get from point A to point B to be successful, so they have to go through a gauntlet of baddies. So all of the characters basically has their moment of like slow motion and focusing on them as they're doing stuff, and it's funny, but it's action packed, and it's it's sort of kinetically drawing you through the scene. It looked so good. I was so happy that literally everybody got to get their hand on the ass kicking ball in that scene.
Yeah, it did. What was I going to ask about the characters? Oh, I see there's a lot of guns in this movie. I don't know if you noticed that in the credits. I assume they're all family.
Oh yeah,
like his whole family is probably acting or voice talent.
I mean, very notably, Kraglin, played by his brother Sean Gunn, has been in all three of these movies and got promoted up to main cast on this one. But yeah, I mean, James Gunn's one of those guys. He started as sort of like an indie horror director, and so when you're in that space, you a lot of times have to rely on the same groups of people, including like family and friends, to sort of make stuff happen. And he's one of those guys who, and I really appreciate the guys like this who carry those people that worked with them upward through their own trajectories.
One more thing in spoilers. I know we're probably going to wrap up soon. As much as this movie didn't pull punches in some sections, I thought it pulled a couple in some notoriously or noticeable areas, namely with Peter Quill. There's a big one that it pulls where he's I forget how they save him, but he's going back to the ship to grab, I think, the cassette player. Is that right?
The Zune. It's the Zune.
The Zune
MP3 player. Yeah.
Oh, okay. And he gets stuck and drifting out in space, and he's pretty much all but, well, what would be probably dead, but he somehow gets revived for the end. That struck me as a little weird. I don't know, maybe a piece of me wanted that to stick a little bit. Like it would be more fitting and dramatic if it did stick, kind of as a disassembling of the team,
Does that change though if you think about that dance scene at the end where everyone's able to just sort of let their worries go free, and sort of like that changes pretty dramatically if they do that knowing that Quill died in that, right? So
yeah, it does.
Would the ending, I guess the question is like, is in this case, yeah, they could have killed the Quill character and maybe they pulled the punch on it, but would the movie has been as satisfying at the end if they had done that? And I don't necessarily know that it would have. I think this had a very specific tone it was going for, and it knew that it had to get to that sequence of all of the characters going their separate way, but changed and better for it. And I just wonder if you do that without Quill, if that feels a little emptier than it would. That's my thought.
No, I can agree with that. But if I do agree with that, then I have to ask myself, well, then why was this scene in it? You know, why bring him to the brink of death and have everybody think that he's dead and then magically comes back?
I think that
you don't need it. You don't really need it. You know,
I feel like that moment was less for Peter and it was more for Warlock, and because of that, then it's more for Groot, because the Warlock character has been dead set on like trying to kill them this entire movie, and he shows mercy in that moment. It's his redemption, but his redemption only happens because he recognizes Groot showing kindness earlier in the movie, and that's part of like Groot's arc too, is just this character who is, we don't get to learn a lot about him, but he communicates so much through his actions. He communicates enough to change and a person that can't technically understand him's entire view on him and his friends. So that's what I thought for the Quill scene. I think it was more for Warlock and Groot's story.
Fair enough. I'll buy it.
All right.
Yeah.
Until I see it a second time. See it a second time.
Super fair.
All right. Well, it's been a great conversation. I'm sure we could talk for a whole nother hour or more about this, but it is time to wrap this one up, I do believe. But Jim, Will, thank you for a great conversation as always, and a big thanks to everyone who is chatting away in the live chat. We didn't get to read every comment, but appreciated what you folks brought to the discussion. If you're listening through the magic of digital tape delay and you missed the live broadcast, it's okay. We still want to hear what you think. Track us down on Facebook or Twitter and find our threads for this film. Let us know what you thought. We'd love to have a little bit of a discourse with you about this film. And just a heads up, folks, we are actually taking the next couple of weeks off. There's a bunch of travel coming up for us, and we tried to figure out a plan that made it work through all the travel, but it just didn't. So we're going to take a 2-week break. When we come back, we're going to have a double stuffed episode for you. We'll be back on May 30th, 2023 with reviews of Fast 10, Fast X, I don't know, as well as The Little Mermaid, the new Disney live action. Now sing.
Jordy wants to run away.
So do I. But anyway, we love you all, and we'd love to stay in touch in between now and our next recording. If you want to chat, you're welcome to hit us up. Let's tell you how you can do so. Jim, where can people interface with you online?
You can find me on Letterboxd, where I rate movies and sometimes review them under at JJP Out West. And you can also find me on Twitter under the same handle, at JJP Out West, or on Facebook under my name, Jim Pugliafico.
All right. Thanks so much, sweetheart. And by the way, while I've got you on air, I just wanted to say happy 6-year wedding anniversary. I love you.
Yes, happy anniversary. Yes. I'll try not to sing it.
You know, I was just kidding anyway. I actually really love your voice.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things.
Y'all.
Oh, thanks, Will. Will, where can people chat with you, friend?
Let's see. The places I'm really at the most right now, honestly, Facebook. Just search for me by William Lindis. Send me a message. Give me a follow. I post on there way too much. I enjoy Letterboxd as well. You just look for either William Lindis or, you have a username there, and my handle there is Fundamental. So look for either of those under the user list. Give me a follow. And then I'm on TikTok. I'm at the Movie Bear, just doing goofy stuff. So yeah, give me a follow. I'd love to socialize with y'all.
All right, excellent. Thanks, Will. Folks, you can find me on Facebook. Look for Brad Harris. I'm the one who likely has Chub, Chaser, Bear, etc. friends with you. Send me a message first so I know you're not a clever bot. You can also find me on Letterboxd at iBradPro. I've been real good this year about logging every single thing I've seen.
Yes, you
I
have.
I haven't written a review for every movie, but I'm at least rating each one that I see, and it's great because now I can go back and look at everything I've seen, and I'm like, oh right, yeah, no, I really love that. In fact, I rated Return of the Jedi 4 stars and Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 4.5 stars. So now I'm having like this crisis where I'm trying to figure out, did I really like that movie better than Return of the Jedi? When I come up with a firm answer, I'll let you folks know. But you can also find me on Twitter at iBradPro as well. Folks, it's been a pleasure. We'll see you all in a couple of weeks. Be safe, have fun, take care. Goodbye, everybody.
I am Groot.
Bye bye.